Welcome back to this fine Sunday morning. It's like 60 plus degrees outside. We're going to try to get some stuff done on the GTO today by fitting the big brake kit. I got my helper.
Hello.
And so today we're going to test fit the kit because we don't know how far off the offset's going to be for the brakes. For the all-wheel drive system. So here we go. Anyway, so I found my bracket. This is the same bracket kit that comes on the GTO big brake kit that Damien made. And so these rotors, or these calipers rather, are not the same as the ATS-V. These are ATS-V. They're supposed to be similar. Supposedly the pistons in here are a little bit smaller, but we'll see. All we're going to do is we're going to bolt this bracket here to these bolt holes and then bolt the caliper to that and just kind of see how far off they are. And it's going to go from there. Press the red button.
It was recording.
It is now. Here's the bracket for the kit. This is just used for test fitment purposes. The alignment is pretty close. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this guy here. We're going to bolt it
right there
onto the car like so. Then bolt the caliper to it and just kind of see how far off we are.
Yeah.
Just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, so this bracket doesn't come like this. This is just something that I did to clear because the hub here comes out further since there's an axle passing through it, unlike the factory GTO one. And Damien sent me this specifically for this particular purpose, which is test fit. So it goes on there after doing some trimming, and then I found out that on the back side of this, it's cut out. Come here. It's cut out some where you can't see it.
You press it.
Anyway, so after grinding the bracket here and test fitting it real quick before I got back on camera, I had to take some material out, which is fine because this is there's an extra hump in here that's not on the factory GTO bracket because there's not an axle passing through it. Other than that, it goes on there like it should. The bolt holes lined up. There's a lot of extra slack in here to make up for a slight oblong offset between the two bolt holes, so that's not a problem. That goes on there. This here is a little bit different in the ear. Might have to grind this down some or just adjust the bracket on the bracket side. We'll cross the bridge when we get there. The other issue we're running into is on the caliper. So let me bolt this back on there and I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So you can see here, I got this bolted on. Now, one thing that comes very apparent is how far in this bolt goes and how far these go. So this originally is designed on the non-all-wheel drive GTO is for this to sit flush because there's also a pretty good amount of material here that to compensate for to make that sit more or less like that so that it's right where it needs to be. So we're not totally out of the ballpark necessarily. I'm gonna grab some washers, see if I can space this out and see if we can at least get this to work. Now the bracket wise bolts directly to the caliper as it should, so we're good there. As long as we can figure out what rotor we gotta run, whatever modifications needed in this bracket or have a different bracket made by Damien is not a big deal because that's all fairly minor, all things considered. Now the other thing I noticed is on the GTO, this big brake kit mounted on the back side of the wheel. On this, it mounts it mounts on the front side of the wheel the same way as it does in the ATS-V, if I remember correctly. So that's a little tidbit if you didn't know. Outside of that, we're going to try some things, see how close we can get this to fit so we can take the measurements and things we discovered to Damien. It's going to go from there. Okay, so we got the washers in here. We're going to go ahead. He sent me some bolts and washers to kind of be able to play with some spacing and all that. We're going to sit this in here like so. Put the first bolt in. The second bolt in. Hopefully it doesn't fall because that would hurt a lot. Here we go. Okay, so without a rotor, come over here. You can't really see right about where it needs to go. Let me see this. But you can kind of see that's about where it needs to be center based off of the hub there. So we still got some room to play with in here as far as the bracket's concerned. Overall, this is manageable, figuring out the spacing, because we can also come back in here, cut this down about that difference to pull that in some if need to. But before we do any more cutting and modifying, we need to first get a rotor that's going to work. Once we get a rotor that's going to work, we can eyeball what we need to do, modify that bracket for hopefully the last time, one good time to get it where it needs to be at, center of said rotor, put it all together, and then we'll have our brake situation figured out. Now, there might be a high-speed ATS-V version of this kit that I could probably spend a buttload of money out of Australia to get here, or we could use some good old-fashioned American ingenuity to work with parts we have to get this to fit, so that way everybody after me who chooses to do this knows what to do, and we can kind of go from there. So I'm going to fiddle for it with a little bit more, and I'll get back with you guys. With this some more, it looks like we're going to need, I've marked it here, you might not be able to see it on camera, about an inch back, because that's the thickness of these tabs, is about an inch. And if you can see, work that inch, that puts this caliper right about center of the factory rotor, which is where it's going to have to sit on the aftermarket one, or the Corvette one is probably the one to run on here, because that's a larger rotor that fits in this spot after widening out the center hub spacing. So with all that being considered, if that's the only modifications we have to make, is have Damien make the same bracket with a little bit of a gap in the center and cutting these down an inch, but otherwise the bracket bolts on to the car and allows the ATS-V, CTS-V calipers to bolt onto with the same, basically the same kit as the GTO gets using the Corvette brakes. I'll call that a W. So we're going to take some notes and send everything over to Damien, and then we'll move on to the next project. All right, so just to wrap up real quick, that my helper went inside because I guess he was waiting to play toys or something. But so yeah, it doesn't look like a lot got done today, but it's mostly just getting caught up with things I've been meaning to do, and test fitting this brake kit is one of them. So I had a hunch, like with most of this built thus far, that the brakes weren't going to be that big of a deal, or shouldn't be, because let's be honest, manufacturers don't like reinventing the wheel because that costs money. So they much rather use the same wheel as many times as possible. That, and since it is the same platform, you know, the VZ platform, I kind of figured that whatever happened up front couldn't be too terribly different from what we got here in the US or anything else in the GM lineup. So it's actually pretty exciting and a bit refreshing to know that the bracket I have that's designed for the GTO as it comes, in the rear-wheel drive 6-speed, for me anyway, will work on the all-wheel drive concept with fairly minor modification. And really, whatever modification I make physically, I'll, you know, record all this and send it back to Davey and see if I can get something properly CNC cut to put on the car to look a lot nicer and fit a lot better. The only other thing we have to take in consideration, though, is the rear. Now, this, if you remember, is spaced on here trying to get the front and rear wheels to sit flush with the end of the car. So this isn't a permanent fixture. This is just kind of on here when I was trying to figure out back spacing. But anyways, that rear caliper is slightly different from the CTS-V one I had on the car before, because this rotor, if I remember correctly, is what was on the car when I had the CTS-V V2 kit on. But on the ATS-V, the inside's just a little bit narrower here. And so the rotor won't go past the spot to go all the way in here. So you might have to run a different rear rotor to run these calipers, or just get CTS-V rear calipers all the same. Other than that, the rest of the kit as it comes for the CTS-V conversion should you bolt onto the car like it was before with that caliper. This ATS-V caliper no differently. The front, we've already got that figured out here. I'm really excited about that. So the next step for this is just to get the same Corvette front rotor we ran on the other kit to put on this car with the all-wheel drive. I talked to the Australian guys and they're saying that the Corvette front rotor is going to be the closest fit for this, using the big brake caliper and having to do a little hub, you know, hollowing out like we did. No big deal. As far as the turbo kit here, I consulted a guy locally who does turbo kits to help me with this, simply because it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse. The modifications that need to be done are super simple fabrication wise, but it's not my forte necessarily. I'd much rather get with somebody who can make short work of this simple modification than the crossover tube in like half a day's time than me fiddle fart with it, wasting lots of material, so I can focus on what I am good at, which is this and the boatloads of wiring I have to do. So look forward to that in January. We'll get this turbo kit finalized. We'll move this honking thing over here, because that's where the battery went originally, so somewhere in this space. Run the downpipe and all that. The cold side, I have a front mount over there in that pile of stuff that will molt on here with a radiator that I bought already, and trying to make all that, you know, fit all this. And so the goal for the first half of 26 is to make the turbo kit permanent, cold and hot side. You know, this is a teal blow-off valve here that came with some Subaru stuff I got. Mount that, get the wastegate taken care of, all the heart piping, get the intake manifold, mount it back up here, everything bolted into place. Same thing with the drive line, crossover tube, rear transmission bracket and transfer case bracket, hard mounted, done. Then we measure for the drive shaft and the rear, hook up the half shafts, make everything mechanically bolted, ready to go. So as far as the car is concerned, outside of wiring and plumbing, it is all-wheel drive. So that's my goal for January, February, because I also have a Subaru I need to get back on the road as well, which will need some minor fabrication of its own, but by comparison, it's super minor stuff. And that's assuming somebody doesn't offer to buy it or trade me something for it, because that's always on the table as well. Because I'd much rather spend a lot of these time resources on this GTO, which I know a lot of you guys have been following or excited about. I haven't forgotten about it. It's just life has been like this. And I've been trying to put out fires as they arise for different issues. But we have not forgotten about this car. It is the primary car, the primary focus of the channel. It's just life. So that being said, I'm going to get back to it. I don't want to really talk about too many other projects other than this one, because this is a big focus for you guys. I'm waiting for an update on this. We did get something done today. Hopefully later this week we'll work on this again. I have to get my kids' Camaro buttoned up so they can get back to being driven, move the Subaru where it's sitting at, and it'll be the tale of two cars until something's running. So anyways, as always, thanks for watching.